And welcome back to Copecetic, everybody. Thank you for joining me on the second episode of this series. We're going to get right into guitars, as you can see over here. I'll be teaching you guys about the basic chord shapes, how to bar chord, um, the caged system a little bit, and mostly some positioning, where to place your hands on the chords and on the neck. So without further ado, that's what we'll get into. Let me just plug in. Yeah, so anyways, this is my dad. He's gonna help me explain the whole caged system, and hopefully.
Isn't it the shape? Isn't it describing shapes?
Yeah. It's not describing chords necessarily, it's describing shapes. So, for example, if we've got our A minor chord, first chord, lowest pitched chord on a guitar, if we're to count the note relationship between the lowest note and the second highest note or the second lowest note from that, um, you'll get like a consistent number. So from this to this, E to B, you go up 7 frets, and you'll find that same note. So if you're to take your open E string chord, the E minor chord, and if you wanted to play it 1 fret higher, you wanted to play it just 1 fret higher, you would have to copy the relationship between every single note in the chord. And that's how we get into the next topic, which is bar chords. A bar chord is, again, a way of maintaining that relationship between the chords. So we take our E minor shape and we try to replicate what the end of the guitar neck is doing. It's its own finger, basically. So we put our finger flat against the first fret, and you just copy what your other fingers were doing in the E minor chord. You bring them up to the 3rd fret on the A string and D string, and the rest are no longer open, but they are now fretted by your index finger on the 1st fret.
Barred, I guess.
Barred. That is the official word for that. I'll flash that up on the screen. A bar chord is any chord that uses a finger to flatten more than one note,
Or
more than one string.
Yeah, because there are mutes and palm muting
Yeah.
and other things you can do with your fret fingers to
Articulation. Well, that's a good thing we can get to as well as some fancy tricks that make it a little easier for transitioning is things like raking or palm muting. They can sort of tie together 2 notes that are very, very difficult. For example, I have a difficulty often playing a G major and then go over to a D major. The whole position of your string, of the position of your fingers have to all change. And as a result, I suck at it. So that's something I always have to practice. So that's how we take an E minor shape and you bring it up to an F minor. So take the relationship of all the notes there, and you try to shift them up. Bring it up to, let's say, G. So that's how you obtain that. You look at what the shape is here. I want that sounding chord, but with different pitches. Like this is not a D, folks. This is a G now.
And you're fretted. But you're
I'm
not fretted on. Yeah, okay.
I'm fretted
so
5,
four.
7, 8, 7.
Right, okay. On fourth fret. What are string numbers? We go.
The string numbers going from lowest pitch to highest pitch is your 4, your 3, 2, and 1. 4, 3, 2, 1. Go. Other chords we'll go over is our A minor and C major, a G major, and a D major. Those are all the different shapes. First position, you know, where your index finger is on first fret, first position. At least that's how I think positions work, people. I might be way off, but honestly, it's easy to, yeah.
Zero with fret.
Zero position, whatever you want to call it, open position. This is the better way of explaining this, actually. These are all open chords. We call them open because there are strings being played that aren't being fretted. So if holding a fret is to close the string off at a point, playing it open is, well, obviously the reverse. Here's the thing about bar chords, people, that makes them very, very useful is it's great. It's a great chord for sounding nice and full, but you can also be very articulate with it with the rakes. And what is a rake? A rake is you just putting your fingers over top of the string, but it's almost like you want to be lazy about how you're putting them on your fingers over the frets, because you obviously don't want to be producing those harmonic notes like we were discussing in the last video. You want to be producing a dull, funky sound across the string board, is what it's going to sound like. So that's how you kind of go from a rake to a bar chord, and there you go, you've got ska music suddenly. There you go. And the G, of course. I don't know if we went over the G necessarily. You put your middle finger on the 3rd fret of the E string. Your index finger goes on the A string there, 2nd fret. And some people play it both with fingers on the 3rd fret of the B and E strings at the top. But a lot of other people also just use one finger on the E string and the B note rings open. And so that's a G. With all the with your D and G strings ringing open as well. It's just a big full open chord. Now a lot of people, this is where the whole shape ideology falls apart, because if you try to bar a G, an open G, if you were to try to bar an open G, you would need, like I'll tell you right now, Steve Vai would be envious of your hands, because that would be impossible.
Well,
I don't even know.
How did?
No, you can do it. It's just you don't like it.
Yeah.
Like
How did Jeff Healy do it?
Yeah, well, I mean,
he got his thumb in there.
Yeah, exactly.
Put his thumb to work. Like all 5 digits doing something.
But if you make it a 4-stringer chord, like I'll play a G, straight up on the 15th fret of the guitar, way, way high. You take the same shape, you play it right up high. That's another good way of teaching yourself bar chords, is you go up to the 12th fret and pretend that that is the 0th fret.
Yeah.
And you just
octave up.
Yeah. Well, we'll get into what octaves are and all that, but there you go. You got your C chord, for instance, but way high. So where was I there? G. You can play 15th fret, 14th fret on A string, E string, and A string respectively. D string and G string on 12th fret. Sorry. And that's a good and easy way of playing your G open shape higher. You can play it in C. Oops, I'm not doing it right anymore. There's your open G shape making a C chord. C major, and there's again your low G open.
Cool.
Yeah. All right, that concludes my tutorial for the moment. We've been working on the editing as we were going. We did realize a couple of things that I missed out on, but we can go over really quickly. Is two things. First of all, I am a BS artist. It's not the caged system; it's the camged system. If you learn from anybody else, they'll teach you the A major before the A minor. But I'll explain in other videos why I just picked out the A minor chord to teach first. But
because it's sweeter.
Because it just flows. That's all. That's why. And anyways, and there's another thing that I was where I was taking our D shapes. I'll show you again. When I was taking my D shapes and then I was moving them up and seemingly arbitrarily going, oh, that's a G. It is, but we'll go over the names of all the notes in another video, but you don't necessarily need to know the names of the notes right now. The important part is to just have fun making as many different chords as possible, but mostly just get used to making these shapes and try shifting them around and
finding its sweet spot too, which is
like any old place is fine. Oh, we're getting a little bit high up here.
yeah.
But again, like the important part is you just recognize the shape that it must mirror what it looks like in the open form.
And how to find where that chord shape is.
Yes.
Can I just, especially like I was just going to do that one little thing with the G. That's not going.
Oh, yeah.
In the cage system, I think that's what brought up. It's not actually the cage system that is written down here. It's the cam system, but in the cage system, I described to Chris how you find the G in all the various shapes: the C, the A, the G. So the C shape, the
A
shape,
major,
right? The G shape in its home position, the E shape, and the D shape, all along the neck here. So the G shape in its home position, but as a C shape, it's up here. But how do you find it here? Another lesson.
Oh yeah. Well, we're gonna. I think what we'll actually do is
and as an A shape, and as an E shape,
yeah,
and as a D shape, which is just like the C shape.
Yeah. Well, anyways, we'll wrap up the whys and hows in the next video with roots and scales.
Yeah.
What is a root? What is a scale? Who knows? Up next on Copecetic. Later, y'all.